Would you use the word flamboyant to describe her, or is that not the right word? Maybe like bigger, larger than life?
She I think she was flamboyant.
Okay, all right, because again, I
Yeah.
find that word charming, but some people don't
I
find that
mean,
word
she
charming.
wasn't flamboyant in that people never knew that she sold a story unless they happened to see it on the newsstand. She didn't go around saying, "Hey, I sold a story." You know, she didn't publicize that. So in that way she was low key. She was low key in that she was a good friend to people. People talked to her on an intimate level. Um, she had a lot of friends, but but she liked to wear big hats, and she liked to smoke cigarettes out of a cigarette holder. And when I was a little girl, it would embarrass me to death when she would come to the school functions because she didn't look like the other mothers. You know, she just, you know, she sort of danced to her own drummer in a way. She was, I think she always felt like a little bit of an outsider because she'd been raised partially in Boston and partially here, so that she had one foot in one door and one foot in the other. And but instead of that making her less than, I think it made her more than, made her feel like more than, you know, so.
I just wish I could have known her. It's not just the book aspect. I can tell, I don't know. I just think she was so far ahead of her time. I don't know. But I don't know that she would have thought that. That was just how she was.
Well, she was she was far ahead of her time in a lot of ways. I mean, she managed to figure out how to have a illegitimate baby and bring it back to Beaufort, South Carolina in the 50s and make up a story that everyone pretended to believe. So it was, you know, she really she was her own person. Yeah.
What do you tell your grandchildren, what do you tell them about her? I mean, like you said, you told your granddaughter you should read the book.
Yeah.
I mean, do they realize her legacy? I mean, do you talk about that?
Probably not. Probably not. I mean, even my kids didn't know her, you know, because she died when I was actually pregnant with my daughter. But when I did the talk here at the library, my kids came, and I think that meant a lot to them. But you know, that connected them in a way. And they've read. I know my daughter's read her books. My son, I don't know. But
do you know? I mean, why did she choose to be buried here? Was Beaufort like her? I mean, she's buried in
the St. Helena, yeah.
Was that something that she wanted?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't think she gave it any thought at all. She was 52 when she died.
That's true.
Yeah, and I don't think she had given it any thought at all. My guess is that would have been fine with her. I don't think she would have cared, you know, particularly. But
I have some things I wanted to read to you. We were
oh
talking
yeah,
about reviews.
yeah.
I'm just going to read a couple, and you tell me what you feel about it.
Yeah.
I remember reading this when I was 16 in the bathroom with the light on, so I wouldn't disturb the rest of the house. I read it in one sitting in about 2 hours. I loved it. Talk about Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jones. Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jones by Anne Head is a book I first read in high school. I remember adoring the book and its characters, so I was happy to find a copy of the book and dive into it again years later. I loved it back then when I first read it, and I loved it just as much now. It's a big eye-opener, and I really love the maturity level that it leaves with you at the end. This one was my favorite one. I loved this book. I read it in one setting. I got so addicted to the characters. When I read it the second time and found out my book had been given to the library, I flipped out and went and bought a second copy. This is a good one. Head wasn't happy just teaching us about teen pregnancies, but she also had things to express about spousal abuse, drinking, smoking, and even the rights of migrant workers. And this is all about Mr. and Mrs. Bojo Jones.
Wow.
So what is that?
Somebody was really picking up on lots of stuff.
That's because your mom was a good writer.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? That her legacy, that's just some of them. There are hundreds of comments about this book.
Yes, yeah, and I actually came across a bunch of reviews from all over the country that they sent her, that Putnam sent her when the time of the book was published. And one of the things that's really interesting is that she didn't write it for kids. She didn't write for kids. She wrote it as a adult fiction book. But then when the reviews started coming out, and there was one review that said, wonderful, 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 but it's too bad it's not going to go to the readers that would. It probably won't go to the readers that would really benefit from it, meaning the younger generation. And of course, what happened was that it did, and it was on school reading lists for 50 years. So yeah. So and I mentioned to several people about what you said to me about reading it, and friends of mine and people slightly younger than me, and they said, "Oh yeah, I remember that book. I read that book in school." And I'm like, "Whoa, who would have known?" So it was widely
It stuck with me.
read.
I read a lot when I was a kid, and there's certain books that stick out to me, certain authors. I liken the way I feel about this book that your mom wrote to a lot of the books that Judy Blume wrote. She is a wonderful author,
Yes.
has a wonderful following, and I think the reason both of those authors have stuck with me 50-some years is because neither author talked down to their audience.
Exactly.
Every child that the book was written about, or every person, no matter how bad they were, or the awful decisions they made, or what people thought of them in the book, they were their own decision. They were just their own people.
And the other thing that I was thinking about with Mrs. Bojo Jones is that the parents, both sets of parents, they come across as so real and so caring, and not evil people. They're just loving people from two different social milieus, and I think even Bojo and July recognize that, which is also kind of amazing. And a wonderful twist.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, isn't she 15 and he's 16? Or
Yeah.
I'm like, they were wise beyond. I mean, he goes out and has fun with the loose girl, and she doesn't kick him out.
Well, I
It's
know.
it's like really, I probably read it when I was about the same age, and I remember thinking, oh, I would not have put up with that. But then I'm like, but I'm not pregnant. I don't know. I don't have. So it really makes you think things.
And I think their fights I found interesting. It's like, would they really have the guts to have that many fights, as opposed to just going their separate ways? That takes a lot of guts to have that kind of.
And I love the time jump.
Bickering that
I think the time jump at the end was a very
Yeah.
important thing, because it wasn't just like, we're going to work this out. It was like, we are working on this.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I could just talk to you all day. Obviously. Okay. Here's what I'd like you to do.
Yes.
Would you mind just the first 2 paragraphs of the book? Do you mind reading?
Okay.
Do you need that's like tiny print. Do you need the bigger one? Because I couldn't see it.
With much talk about teenage marriages, I feel, for whatever it may be worth to some young couple on the brink of same, that I should tell you about mine. I was 16, and Bojo was 17 when we got married. As the statistics say, most teenagers who marry because they have to, or else. We looked into the something of or else's and decided they weren't for us. Maybe marriage wasn't either, but at least it was a positive thing to do, and everything else looked negative.
I got chills. I looked through all of it and I highlighted some things, but I'm like, that first couple of paragraphs was just exactly, I mean, that tells the whole story.
Yeah.
It tells the whole story.
Yeah.
So, is Trilby High School a real place?
I don't think so, no. But this definitely could be Beaufort. The whole book could.
Well, real quick, was your mom dead set against it moving it to the West Coast because of the fact that maybe even back then the West Coast was a little more liberal?
That was part of it.
Yeah.
That it didn't feel like she couldn't really place the families in the West Coast setting, and yeah, and it was you know, it was a different lifestyle. I mean, their friends would have responded maybe somewhat differently, or it would have been a different culture in the high school. You know, it would have been just very different.
It wouldn't have been what she wanted it to be. So,
Yeah, it wouldn't have been what she wanted it to be.
is there anything else you want us to know before we wrap up?
Well, you know, when Pat Conroy came over to my house in, probably about end of the 1990s on Fripp, and he was talking to me about Mother, and he was saying, you know, somebody should write her story. And I said, yeah, you know, and then it was shortly thereafter that he did write that chapter in his book. But a couple of years ago, I got a phone call from the archivist at the College of Charleston, and he said, you know, I'm trying to track down the papers of Ann Head. I love her writing and whatever. Do you have any of her papers? And I said, yeah, I do. I have bins and bins of letters and papers and manuscripts and everything that are sitting in a storeroom in my house. I have not a clue what to do with them. And they've just been sitting there for years. And he said, wow, I would love to, you know, we would love to take care of them at the college. And so I went and I talked to him, and and I liked him, and we had an interchange, and I talked to him about her, and after we talked for a bit, he said, you know, he said, you really should write her biography. She's got a great story. And so I said, really? So that's kind of what spurred this. Now that I started writing it, and then got the opportunity to present here at the library. And my goal really was to bring her name back as a major American author, and certainly major South Carolina author, because she disappeared. You know, she died so young, and she disappeared. She's not really recognized, and my goal is to have her recognized. Her books and stories were published all over the world, you know, in many different countries, but as well as, you know, in the United States. And so I'd like to have her name come back up, and this kind of thing seems like a step in the right direction. So thank you.
No, thank you. Are you actively writing it, or are you still?
I'm actively writing.
Oh, you have to let me know when it's published.
Wait,
Please, please, please. I don't
that's
care
going to be
I
a
don't care
long
if
way
that's
down
okay.
the line.
Just keep me in touch. Keep me in touch.
Okay, yeah, let's stay in touch.
After I talked with you the first time, I have a friend named Kim Bakia-Suin, and she runs the Savannah Book Festival every year.
Oh, okay.
And I love the Savannah Book Festival.
Yeah.
I've gotten to be pretty close with her.
Uh-huh.
And after, Drew, you can ask Drew, I had to tell everybody, I'm like, just this confluence of, I talked to my daughter, we talked about the book, I looked up the author, I found out it was like dominoes falling into place. And when I told Kim, I said, Kim, I don't know who else I can tell about this, just somebody else who loves authors and books. And she was like, Chris, when you get that story, we really want to feature it on the book festival page. So,
nice.
So we're gonna be. It takes me a little time to get things together, and so I don't know it'll be a quick turnaround because I want to do it right. But when I do, I will send it to you, and I hope you enjoy it.
I will.
I have had the best time talking with you.
Well,
today.
it's. I mean, I'm thinking that all these things are steps toward getting her and the recognition that she deserves, and so that's what this is about.
I I told Grace, I'm like, I don't have a Beaufort County Library card, but I might have to take some of the books home with me. So, but is Mr. and Mrs. Bowden Jones your favorite of her books, or do you?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's wonderful. I like the others as well. I love Fair with Rain. But I also love a lot of the stories that she wrote. And she wrote this fabulous thing. It's a poem that was published, I can't remember the magazine, Red Book or McCall's maybe, called Requiem for a Bachelor. And it is one of the funniest things I've ever read in my life. It's a many page long poem about a group of people who are lamenting the fact that their favorite bachelor, a group of women are lamenting the fact their favorite bachelor is getting married. And he was always the one that would make them feel so special, and he was always the one that would be the extra man, and he would always be the one that would compliment them and everything. And now he was getting married. And you know, and this was called Requiem for a Bachelor. She wrote that before Schoenheim wrote Company. Do you know the play Company?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here going, Requiem for a Bachelor.
Yeah. Yeah. She wrote that before. Stephen Sondheim wrote Company. I don't know, but I can't. But it's like, yeah, you know, it's the story. It's the story.
I might have to do a little research on that just to see.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, all I know is the dates.
That's so cool.
But it's and so a lot of her things, and I've got them. Grace has them, and I also have them scanned. Okay. So if you have an interest,
she would give me some digital copies of them.
Yeah,
so that'd be great. I did get a few pictures. Like I have a picture of your mom, like just beautiful with the cigarette. I mean,
do you want to see the pictures of her? I have them.
Yeah. We'd like to put them out here and do a
Well, no, I've got them on my computer.
Did you bring it with you? Yeah, sure.
Okay.
And you can email me a couple too. That'd be great.
Because I thought, where did